The night was quiet, the air heavy with the scent of rain and memories as she sat by the window, her eyes tracing the fading drops that slid down the glass. Every sound carried the weight of silence, every breath whispered the ache of something lost. She had once believed that love could be hidden, kept safe within the pages of time, but love has a way of echoing even when buried beneath the dust of forgotten years. Her name was Alina and his was Rayhan, two souls who met not in the brightness of a crowd but in the quiet corridors of ordinary days. They never spoke of love, not once, yet every glance, every half smile, every shared silence was louder than words could ever be. She remembered the way his voice lingered when he said her name, the way his eyes softened when she looked away. It was a secret world they built, one that needed no promises, no declarations, just the presence of each other. The days passed like slow music, each one a note in a song only their hearts could hear. They would meet under the old banyan tree by the library where the world seemed to pause for them alone. Sometimes they read books, sometimes they said nothing at all, and sometimes they simply listened to the sound of their own hearts beating in rhythm with the wind. He would watch her eyes move across the page and she would feel his gaze like sunlight warming her skin, but they never called it love, for they knew that once spoken the spell might break. There was something sacred about their silence, something pure like the first drop of rain on dry earth, yet the world around them was not so kind. The world demanded labels, explanations, boundaries, and they had none. One day he told her he would be leaving, that his father had found him a place far away in another city, another life. She had smiled as though it meant nothing, but inside her heart trembled like a candle fighting the wind. He asked her nothing, she said nothing, and that silence became their last conversation. Days turned into months, the letters stopped before they even began, for neither had the courage to write, neither had the words to confess what they had hidden between the lines of their eyes. And time moved on as it always does. Alina grew older, not in years but in memories. She carried him within her like a story unfinished. Sometimes when the night grew too still, she would open her diary and press her hand against the empty pages as if feeling the weight of all the words she never wrote. In another city Rayhan walked through streets filled with noise, yet heard only her silence. He kept her photograph not in a frame but between the pages of his notebook, folded small like a secret prayer. He read her name under his breath every morning as if calling back a piece of his soul he too had tried to forget. But love once hidden does not die, it only changes shape. It hides in the corners of thought, in the pause between laughter, in the spaces where light refuses to fade. Years passed and the world changed, but their story remained unwritten, like a song waiting for its last verse. One evening when the sky turned the color of ashes, Alina received an old parcel. The handwriting was familiar, shaky yet warm. Inside was a book, her favorite one, and between its pages she found a letter, yellowed and fragile. She unfolded it with trembling hands. The words began simply with her name. My dearest Alina, I have tried to live without writing this, but every silence I keep turns into your voice. I do not know if you still remember me or the sound of rain on that afternoon, but I remember everything. I remember your eyes, the way they carried both light and sorrow. I remember how we never said goodbye because we were afraid that the word itself might break us. I thought I could forget, but love does not listen to reason. It hides like fire beneath ashes, waiting for one breath to rise again. Her tears fell silently as she read the words. The paper blurred, but the meaning shone clear. Love had not left, it had only waited. It had lived quietly between the folds of time. She pressed the letter against her chest, feeling the warmth of a memory that refused to fade. Outside, the rain began again like an echo of the past, and she closed her eyes, letting it wash over her as if it were his voice whispering her name once more. Rain kept falling as if the sky itself remembered their story. Alina sat by the window, her fingers tracing the edges of that fragile letter, her heart trembling between the ache of what was lost and the warmth of what still lived. She could almost hear his laughter carried in the sound of the storm. She could almost feel the air tremble with the ghost of his touch. Time had passed, yes, but memory had not aged. It had simply grown quieter, deeper, more patient. She thought of all the words she never said, the moments she let slip through the gaps of fear and pride. How strange it was that love so silent could still shout through the years. She remembered how he once said that love was not about promises but about presence, how he had looked at her not as someone to possess but as someone to remember forever. And now as she held the letter close, she felt his presence in the rhythm of her breath. Days passed and she began to read the letter again and again, each time discovering a new line she had missed before, as if the words were alive, shifting with her heartbeat. The ink had faded but the emotion had not. She could feel his soul woven into every curve of the handwriting. She imagined him writing it late at night, his hand trembling, his eyes heavy with unshed tears. Maybe he had written it 100 times before finding the courage to send it. She wondered if he ever knew that his silence had been her only companion for years. In another part of the world, Rayhan sat alone in his study, the candlelight flickering against his tired face. He too had received something, a photograph, a memory sent back to him by fate, one of their old pictures taken unknowingly by a stranger under that banyan tree. He looked at it for a long time, his heart aching with both joy and sorrow. He whispered her name softly as if afraid the night might steal it from him. His life had been full of achievements but none had filled the void she left behind. He had married once out of duty, not love. The woman was kind but his heart was already buried somewhere else. He tried to be good to her, he tried to be present, but every time he looked into her eyes he saw the reflection of the one who was gone. His wife knew, though she never said it. She could sense the ghost of a love that lived beyond her reach, and so she kept her silence too, for silence was the only language that bound them all. Years moved like wind through autumn leaves until one evening fate turned its last page. Rayhan fell ill. The doctors said his heart was weak, but he knew it was not illness, it was longing, a slow ache that had never found its rest. He asked for his old notebook and pen. He wanted to write one last letter, one last confession before the light faded. He wrote without stopping, as if every word was carrying his remaining breath. My beloved Alina, if this letter reaches you, know that you were the only truth I ever lived. I carried you through every season, through every lonely night. I built my life around the memory of your silence. I do not ask for forgiveness nor for remembrance, only that when the wind touches your face you smile once, knowing that somewhere in that moment I am still with you. Your name was my prayer, your silence my peace, and if souls ever meet beyond this life I will find you again where time has no meaning. He sealed the letter with trembling hands, placed it inside his favorite book and whispered her name before closing his eyes for the last time. Outside the wind rose, carrying the scent of rain and jasmine, and somewhere far away the world paused for a heartbeat, as if recognizing a soul returning home. Back in her home, Alina awoke suddenly that night, her heart racing. She felt a strange warmth in the air, like the echo of a farewell. She went to the window and saw the moon breaking through the clouds, soft silver light spilling over the earth. She whispered his name, though she did not know why, and at that moment a calm filled her, and knowing without reason she pressed her hand over her heart and smiled through her tears, for she knew deep inside that love once hidden had finally been set free. Days turned into weeks and Alina found herself moving through the world as though guided by something unseen. She could not explain it, but there was a stillness inside her now, a quiet acceptance that did not come from forgetting but from understanding. Love had not left her, it had simply changed form. It had become the air she breathed, the light that followed her shadow, the silence that spoke in her heart. One morning as she walked through the market, an old bookseller called out to her. His table was covered with worn volumes and faded papers. He smiled gently and handed her a small package, saying, "This was left here years ago, perhaps for you." She frowned in surprise but took it. The paper was yellowed and tied with a thin red thread. She carried it home, her hands trembling, her breath shallow. Inside she found a book, its cover soft and familiar, and between its pages another letter. She unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was weaker but unmistakably his. Her eyes filled before she even began to read. My dearest Alina, if you are reading this, then I am no longer among the living, yet my words will live as long as you remember them. I had written once before, but there were things I could not say then because my heart was still afraid. Now I have no fear, only truth. Love cannot die, it only waits in silence until we are ready to listen. I do not regret the distance or the years, for every day apart was still a day lived with you in my heart, and though we never walked together, we journeyed through time side by side, unseen but not forgotten. When you feel the wind, it is me. When you see the rain, it is me. When you close your eyes, it is us. The paper shook in her hands as her tears fell upon it. She pressed her lips to the page, whispering his name again and again as though calling him back from the stars. The room felt lighter, as if the air itself sighed. She closed her eyes and for a moment she could see him standing by the window, smiling softly, his eyes filled with the same warmth she had always known. He did not speak, yet she felt his voice within her heart saying, "Do not cry, my love, we are never apart, we were never apart." She placed the letter inside her diary, and beside it she laid a white rose fresh and trembling with dew. Then she sat by the window as the rain began again. The world outside blurred into silver and memory, and she whispered softly, "Thank you for finding me again." Her lips curved into a faint smile, the kind that holds both sorrow and peace. Time moved on quietly as it always does. Alina grew older, her hair silver like the moonlight. She still walked beneath the same banyan tree, sometimes leaving flowers at its roots, sometimes reading old letters aloud to the wind. People would see her and think she was talking to herself, but she knew she was not, for love once born never truly leaves. It lives in echoes, in dreams, in the small spaces between heartbeats. One evening when the sky turned crimson and gold, she felt the call of sleep stronger than before. She lay down beside her diary, her hand resting on the letter, her eyes closed with a smile, and in that final breath she saw him waiting beneath the banyan tree. The years gone, the silence broken, his arms open wide. They walked toward each other and the world faded into light. There was no pain, no fear, only the gentle hum of peace. Two souls meeting once more beneath the eternal sky, where time could not reach them, where promises were no longer broken, where words were no longer needed and love no longer hidden. And somewhere in the quiet of that infinite dawn a page turned slowly, the ink glowed faintly, and the wind carried the whisper of the names together, forever written between the lines of a story that never truly ended.